Thanks, everybody, for joining us here today for the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative Exchange meeting, kickoff meeting, reboot meeting. This first meeting is a partnership between Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative, or TECC, and the Tribal Climate Health Project. These meetings are a bit of a reboot of what we had previously done under the California Tribal Gap Analysis Project. And we're excited to have you back. We hope that this is going to be something we'll sustain for a long time to come. We're hoping to do bi-monthly meetings and maybe some in between, but let's get going. So the purpose of these meetings is to learn, share, and discuss important climate and energy-related opportunities and issues affecting California tribes. Each meeting will start with a brief welcome and overview for those that are joining for the first time. We will spend a little time on an opportunity roundtable where we'll cover various relevant key funding opportunities and other opportunities that are out there. And then the TECC-X meeting may or may not involve a breakout, where we have one or more different sessions. Today we have a breakout. There's going to be, TECC is going to hold its breakout on federal funding challenges, and the Tribal Climate Health Project is going to focus on climate resilience training. And then we will wrap up by reporting briefly out to talk about next steps and close the webinar, the meeting. So I'm Josh Simmons. I am co-director of the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative, also president and principal consultant for Prosper Sustainably LLC. Because we have brief time, I'm not going to go much further than that, but I've been working in the tribal space on climate energy projects for a long time now. And then we have Angie and Shasta. So Angie is a CEO and principal consultant for Prosper Sustainably, and Shasta Gaughan, environmental director in TIPO with the Paul Band Mission Indians. They will be leading the Tribal Climate Health Project portion of this. Shasta is also co-director of the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative, as well as Matt Rantanen from Southern California Tribal Chairman's Association. So a little bit more about TECC. So the Tribal Energy and Climate Collaborative is a program under the Southern California Tribal Chairman's Association, which members include 25 federally recognized tribes throughout Southern California. TECC has 3 program areas. This particular webinar series falls under its capacity building and technical assistance programming. There is an economic and workforce development program, and also a policy and regulatory advocacy program. You may have joined us last week for our CPUC training series on how to understand and advocate for tribes' interests at the CPUC. And that was going to be that's going to be a monthly series. So if you're on our email list, you'll be notified of that. But overall, TECC's purpose is to identify and advance climate, energy, and related economic and workforce development goals of SCTCA and other tribes. And then the Tribal Climate Health Project's mission is to develop learning resources to help tribes and tribal serving professionals safeguard their communities from the health impacts of climate change. Tribal Climate Health Project offers technical assistance, capacity building. They're doing data development to support tribes, not just in California, but across the country. And that program has been around for over 9 years now. Okay, so I guess please introduce yourself in the chat. If you could share your name and your tribe or organization, that would be lovely. All right, so we're going to spend a few minutes before we go into the breakouts on an opportunity roundtable. So we want to have this be a standing item on the agenda to share timely and other assistance opportunities. We'd love for you to share any grants, incentives, events, or other capacity building opportunities for tribes in the chat. Some that are on our radar are the Strategic Growth Council's Affordable Housing and Sustainable Communities grants and loans, almost $1 billion of funding available, and the minimum award is $1 million. And so tribes are eligible. These do focus on housing projects, but a great opportunity if it's a good fit for your community. There's a notice of interest for California Office of Emergency Services hazard mitigation grant funding opportunity. So this is a reimbursement-based program. If you go through Cal OES as opposed to directly applying as a tribe for the HMP grants through FEMA, I think, quite a bit easier in my experience. So it's worth considering, and it doesn't also preclude your tribe from pursuing funding directly from FEMA for these types of activities, as far as I know. So Grid Alternatives is now kind of rebranding their tribal program as Tribal Energy Alternatives. I think it's actually kind of becoming a subsidiary type entity. They recently opened up their facility and residential project grants for awards up to $200,000 for federally recognized tribes. And these are for tribal facilities and tribal residential solar projects. The Green Horizons project grants, $40,000. And this is to assist tribal producers with implementing sustainable ag practices. The Tribal Wildlife Grant, Fish and Wildlife Service, or Department of Fish and Wildlife Service for grants up to $200,000 to advance various initiatives supporting tribal species and habitat. And the California Tribe for tribes with non-gaming tribes or limited gaming tribes are eligible for California's Tribal Nation Grant Fund Impact Grants, and there's a substantial amount of money, $1 million to $3 million for economic development projects. The Fast Charge California project for DC fast chargers. If you're down in San Diego, the San Diego River Conservancy Prop 4 grants. There may be Prop 4 grants in other regions as well. And rolling grants for low emissions development programs, incentives and technical assistance through the CEC. So if you know of other funding opportunities kind of timely right now, that should be a high priority. Please share them in the chat. And some featured events. So the Alliance for Tribal Clean Energy is hosting their Tribal Energy Evolution Summit in St. Paul, Minnesota. So that's actually in 2 weeks from now. So I encourage you to register for that. We'll share the slides afterward to have these links. The Mountains to Sea 2025 Southwestern Tribal Summit, hosted by the Climate Science Alliance and ITEP. That's going to be overlapping the other event, May 7th and 8th in Ventura. The Native American Fish and Wildlife Society Annual National Conference, Tribal Emergency Management Conference. At Chonga, there'll be the Native American Economic Development Conference, the 16th Annual California Climate and Energy Collaborative Forum, which is going to be held in July in San Jose. And finally, the National Adaptation Forum, save the date for 2026, if you're willing to look that far ahead. So if you have other events, please share them in the chat. I've taken up my 10 minutes, so we're gonna break out now. We have 2 different breakouts. Tila will offer the opportunity to break out to each session. I think actually if you're going to stay with tech and talk about federal funding challenges and solutions, please stay here. If you're going to be joining the Tribal Climate Health Project to focus on climate resilience training, then join breakout room number 1. Is that right, Tila? All right, so we have Zealand Hoover and Caitlin Bolger here today. I'll allow them to introduce themselves. They're representing both Environmental Protection Network and Lawyers for Good Government. So I'll let you introduce yourselves, and then I'll hand over the controls so you can pull up your slides.
Great. Well, wonderful to be here. I'm Zealand Hoover. I was, during the Biden administration, a senior advisor to the EPA administrator and responsible for implementing programs under the Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. So that was about $100 billion in new funding, much of it dedicated to tribal communities. And since leaving EPA, I have been working with the Environmental Protection Network and Lawyers for Good Government on what we are calling the Safeguarding Federal Funding Initiative, which is intended to help tribes, nonprofits, and other communities protect the funding that they are legally entitled to, because you have signed award agreements from the federal government. And so we're providing a wide range of technical assistance and legal resources that Caitlin will go into in more detail, and we're looking forward to this conversation. So Caitlin, over to you.
Hi, everyone. My name's Caitlin. I'm the National Grants Associate with the Environmental Protection Network. I'm based in Charleston, South Carolina, but originally from Rhode Island. And I have been the point person for a lot of EPN support with tribal groups, working to stand up different support groups for different grant programs. So I will be sure to note those and also send those your way, Josh, to pass along to any tribes that are interested as well. But we can get started and I can share our slides.
Okay, so as a reminder,
Everyone.
wanted to join the Tribal Climate Health Project training, then you can join the breakout there. If you need me to sign, you just drop that in the chat and I'll put you over there. But Caitlin, take it away.
All right, so I will kick us off. As Zealand mentioned, the Environmental Protection Network and Lawyers for Good Government have come together to support federal grantees and safeguarding their federal funding. So we've been doing that through trainings and office hours, providing different guidance documents and template letters, and also providing one-on-one support to bolster capacity to respond to these threats and safeguard your projects and funding. So a lot of this one-on-one support looks like legal and technical education. So providing trainings on financial and programmatic compliance to ensure that funds are managed, spent, and reported on correctly. We also provide direct legal and technical assistance on compliance issues and audits, inquiries and investigations, and also providing proactive and crisis communication support to make sure that everyone understands the benefits and importance of these grants and projects. So to move into kind of what we've been recognizing in this work is there's these different buckets of situations or status of grants. So we have this one bucket that is an organization has applied for a federal funding under the Biden administration, but they either were not selected or they were selected and not awarded. So in this case, agencies do have discretion to cancel competitions and to change their selections. So what that means for these groups is to really advocate to the agency and your elected representatives the importance of your project and the positive impact that your projects will have. Another bucket of grantees is those who have an active grant, but either have their funds frozen in ASAP or have received a termination letter. And so in this case, you do have legal rights to access your funds and dispute any termination you receive. And so our biggest recommendation for these groups is to submit an intake form for Lawyers for Good Government. So they really have the inside scoop on your situation and what's going on, and then they can really steer you in the right direction and provide specific guidance based on your situation. And then lastly, our last bucket of grantees is those who have an active grant and have no issues, their funds aren't frozen, their project's moving forward. So in this case, there are steps you can take to be proactive in defending your grant. And EPN has a listserv and webinars that we provide that we would recommend you moving forward. And I will pass this over to Zealand to dive into a little more technical actions you can take moving forward.
Thanks, Caitlin. Yeah, so a few things that you can do if you find yourself in really any of those buckets. So first is if you're facing any sort of adverse circumstances because of a grant that you have signed. So again, it's different if you applied for a grant and you never actually received it, you don't have a signed award agreement. In those cases, your recourses are more limited, though, as I'll talk about in a moment, there's still things you can do. But if you have a grant that has been signed with an agency and your funds are frozen, or you have received a termination letter, or your agency is trying to amend the grant and you are not sure what the implications of those amendments may be, then I strongly encourage you to fill out the Lawyers for Good Government intake form that is linked in this document that Josh will send around. The intake form is the front door for coming into the safeguarding federal funding initiative. So that is how Lawyers for Good Government and EPN will know who you are and what you need. It is the best way to get the most up-to-date information. There's a network of pro bono attorneys that are available to provide legal assistance if you need it. And we can also connect you with other partners that are providing technical assistance and communication support. And EPN has a team that is both convening grantees around different grant programs and providing technical assistance on different compliance-oriented activities. As Caitlin mentioned in the opening, for those of you who are fortunate enough to have grants where you still have access to the funding, you're still implementing the grants, it is particularly important that everyone be fully compliant with all of the terms and conditions and not create any cause for the government to potentially terminate your grant. And so compliance is obviously always important, but given the specter that non-compliance may become sort of weaponized to seek termination of grants that this administration does not like, there's now this unique circumstance of needing to focus on compliance while also not necessarily being able to rely on the agency to help you if you hit a roadblock. So EPN is trying to fill some of those gaps. The second point is around contacting your elected representatives. So this is important. If you're in the bucket of having a grant that's facing adverse circumstances, it's also important if you're in the bucket of applying for a grant and they haven't made selections, or maybe they selected you for a grant, but you never got a signed award under the prior administration and you don't know what the path forward is. This is a good opportunity to reach out and remind your federal partners of their treaty obligations, of the important relationship between the federal government and tribes. There are a number of different avenues for outreach. We have seen data points where elected members of Congress have intervened with agencies on behalf of particular grant programs or particular grantees. This has been most noticeable, frankly, with Republican members of Congress engaging on behalf of their constituents, and in some circumstances that has led to the administration unfreezing funds or reassessing their approach to different grant programs. I know that, for instance, the Alaska delegation has been pushing really hard for the Trump administration to unfreeze and continue to support the hundreds of millions of dollars that is going to Alaska Native communities. They have been very forward-leaning in advocating for their constituents. This is definitely an opportunity for you all to also make sure that your elected representatives are aware of how you are impacted and ask them for constituent support. I believe Josh is going to take the sample letter that EPN has that is fairly general and tailored a bit for the unique needs of tribes and send something around that is a bit more tailored to your circumstances than what we have off the deck. But the point holds that there's on almost every circumstance only upside to contacting your representatives. I'm not aware of a polite letter to an elected official having a negative repercussion. I've heard of plenty of letters not getting a response, nothing coming of them. I am not aware of anything rebounding negatively from reaching out and requesting essentially constituent services from your elected officials. And then third is telling your story. We really do encourage communities that are impacted by these funding freezes, by these terminations, to speak with reporters, to put out press releases, to post on social media, to share with their community. The more visibility there is into these actions, the more pressure there is on agencies to reconsider certain actions. And so again, telling your story is not always going to be the solution, but in many cases, being out there, speaking positively, does have the potential to rebound to your benefit. I encourage everyone to be respectful and sympathetic in how you're seeking the sort of portrayal of your communities. Obviously, that is a decision for you to make. But again, adversarial messaging is not as helpful if you are trying to get a agency to reconsider a frozen grant or to come around to honoring selections that were made. I think our general overarching guidance has been that the best articles are ones that present a sympathetic portrayal of communities that have been harmed by recent actions and raise attention to that. But of course, you all have deep expertise and experience telling your own stories and speaking on behalf of your communities. So, take that as one data point of how we are talking with groups nationally, and tailor that as it suits your needs. The last page that we want to
Actually,
talk
let's
about.
keep you here for a moment, Seelan. I think it'd be helpful, even from my perspective. I mean, I think we may give people a chance to ask questions about this, but
By all means.
maybe if you could pull up the intake form and then just kind of talk through, like, what does that look like? Like, where does it go? What's the what should somebody who completes an intake form expect, from that, from in terms of what information they need to provide, what level of effort they may need to make. I do have it right here if you want me to pull it up.
Yeah, whoever, Josh or Caitlin, it looks like you're both.
Yeah, so I have, you all can see my screen now, right?
Yep.
Okay, so this is what the intake form looks like. So, some basic information about, the person making the request, and type of organization. So tribes are listed, what federal agency regulates the grant. So, in some circumstances, there's a flow down grant. I assume that this is, from, like, say, the state. There's actually several state grants that are being affected as a result. So I assume that they would just put whatever agencies provide the funding to the state. And, the project itself, what communications have you received? If you have sought any legal assistance, and then provide details on that, whether or not you're the primary grantee. So if it's a state grant, then you would say no. And then what's the status of the funding at this time, the amount, the percent of the funding that's been received, the harms you faced, and then consultation, and then I guess other documentation you're willing to share. Who are you willing to share with? Who did you, how did you hear about EPN here? And so, okay, so somebody completes this form, they need to share this information, they get contacted by somebody from Lawyers from Good Government. Are you able to share, like, more details about, like, what happens from there, what additional information, what actions are being taken? Do you also have any examples of specific cases where local government, tribe, or somebody's progressed with this that's resulted in some change?
Yeah, so we have several hundred organizations, nonprofits, and cities and tribes that have submitted this intake form and have gone through the process, which entails both sharing that information with the Environmental Protection Network team so that Caitlin and her colleagues can follow up with you and connect you with the right cohort of peer grantees and resources, and also Lawyers for Good Government make sure that you are receiving, based off of those boxes that you checked, the right set of resources relevant to your experience, and where applicable refers you to a pro bono attorney. Lawyers for Good Government is not ever your attorney. They are connecting you with someone who can be your attorney where that is needed. And then they are providing legal best practices and tools that of course you would want to review with with your tribe's legal counsel and with any external pro bono counsel or that you're working with. So some examples of resources that have been pushed out to folks in this ecosystem. Last week, a federal judge in Rhode Island issued a nationwide injunction ordering several agencies, including the Department of Interior, to unfreeze all bill and IRA, so all Infrastructure Law and Inflation Reduction Act funds that had been categorically frozen, and to make that money available to the grantees. The same day that injunction, preliminary injunction went out, Lawyers for Good Government sent out to everyone who had submitted this intake form and was in our ecosystem a sample demand letter that grantees could send to their agency, pointing to the judicial order and demanding that access to their funds be restored. Generating that type of record is quite important because that judicial order went out last week. And then yesterday morning, there was a status hearing where the government had to go back before that judge and explain whether they were complying or not. And Lawyers for Good Government was following up with grantees to find examples of grantees who had sent a letter saying, this judge told you to let me access my funds, and then finding examples of grantees who still could not access their funds, and then feeding that to the litigants to explain to the judge that the government is still not in compliance. So that is one example. There, of course, are a few data points where it appears that agencies have complied and have unfrozen funds. So that is great news. But that's an example of how by coming into this ecosystem, you will have access to very quick guidance on what is happening within court cases impacting Interior, EPA, Department of Energy, Department of Agriculture in the climate and environmental space, and specific actions that you can take to assert your legal rights. Caitlin, anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think the biggest thing and something that we have gotten a lot of questions on, Josh, if you want to navigate back to the intake form and look at the question that was like, who do you want to share the information with, which was towards the bottom. Are you willing to share? So a lot of organizations come to us asking how to get connected to litigation. So how to be involved directly with certain lawsuits that are coming out. And so that is the best way if you are interested in being connected to any sort of litigation that comes out of this. Checking that box lets L4GG know that you're of interest. And so they can reach out to you if they know something is brewing and coming to fruition, that they can loop you in before we get past that point where like no one else can be involved. And also I can touch on some of the cohort
Maddie,
calls.
do you want to watch something or no?
That we have. So
Are you
EPN focuses on a lot of our cohort calls are focused on EPA grantees. And so basically for each grant program, we have a cohort. And that honestly, one of the biggest needs we saw was that people just wanted to be in community with other grantees, discuss actions they're taking, discuss barriers that they're having, how certain people have found ways around them. So it's an opportunity to hear from your peers and also learn from them as well. So we have those happening the last 45 minutes of our bi-monthly webinars and office hours, so we can make sure everyone gets the registration for that as well. And then we are lifting up a specific CPRG working group for tribes. So that is one thing that is in the works currently.
Yeah, if you could share the links to, on the EPN's website in the chat, along with registration for those other webinars, for those that want to stay in touch and take advantage of these opportunities, that'd be great. You also mentioned the sample letter. I just should share that I'm not fully committed to necessarily customizing one for all tribes. There's a possibility we may develop one for the SCTCA tribes, and that template likely would be applicable to others. We've not done so yet. We have done, in another case, we've supported circulating a letter, but this is a copy of the template letter to congressperson or senator, and that spells out what the situation is and what the grant is and all that. So I'll share a copy of the template letter in the chat as well. But ultimately, like, we want this to be actionable for you, like, that you have steps. You're building a record, and we need many people out there to be building this record to support that there's damage here, and it makes it legally actionable. So like Zealand was saying, your specific project could be named or provided to a court, and if that's the case, well, if they're rectifying that, those that are named are going to be they're going to ensure that those ones are being resolved to the extent that the decisions keep going in that direction. But if they're not aware of it, it's more difficult for them to enforce it. So I would definitely advise you take advantage of this opportunity. So we can kind of move over to the tax credit. So I can kind of cue this up a bit because we've been involved. So I'm through Prosper, we're serving as owner's representative for a number of tribes on clean energy projects, particularly microgrids, where the investment tax credit is critical to the capital stack for the success of those projects. And as of right now, there is not, well, I guess as stated here, Zealand, actually, if you want to provide the overview, I can, kind of share the context.
Yeah, happy to. So hopefully many of you are taking advantage of the many new and expanded and improved tax credits that were passed in the Inflation Reduction Act. There's obviously been a lot of focus on what the future of those looks like, given the change in administration. One important point is that unlike grants, there's not a mechanism for turning off per se tax credits because they are enshrined in the law. There are, of course, folks have raised the question of what would happen if they turned off certain direct pay portals or functionalities, or what would happen if they changed certain regulatory guidances. We haven't seen that happen yet for, I believe, two reasons. One, there's a huge amount of industry support for many of these tax credits, and tens to hundreds of billions of dollars in investments that have been made on the basis of these tax credits. Two, Congress is actively deciding the long-term fate of these credits in the context of the reconciliation budget bill that they are working on right now. My theory is that the administration doesn't want to rock the boat further on those negotiations, and so they are letting the tax credits come along while Congress decides what changes they want to make to the tax credits. There's a lot of press coverage here. It does sound like they are looking to make a number of them less generous, either by sunsetting them sooner, reducing the payouts, or otherwise paring them back. That said, it also looks like a meaningful amount of the tax credit support will continue in some form across many of these programs. There is a lot of engagement with Congress underway in a lot of fronts right now to talk about the benefit of these tax credits, what they mean in different communities. Direct pay is a particular place that a lot of groups are highlighting the benefits, and so There is an ask, for instance, to share direct pay experiences using this form. So if your tribe has used direct pay to more efficiently deploy projects, I would encourage you to consider sharing that story, because all of this feeds into education efforts to help members of Congress understand, again, how these different provisions are useful to their constituents. So that's the general lay of the land. We are all waiting eagerly to see what happens. And like I said, this is insofar as your tribe has a particular interest in any of these tax credits, this is the time to engage with your members of Congress and make sure that they understand your positions.
Yeah, and I think, to add to that, I believe is a coalition of at least 20 Republican representatives and or senators that are advocating for maintaining the investment tax credit. In particular, what we've been hearing is the majority of the projects are in red states too. So and so it seems like we're not seeing the same level of attack or threat to the investment tax credit as we're seeing on a lot of the grants that people are experiencing this with. So some action that we've been taking for the tribes we're working with on microgrid and other clean energy projects are some of what they shared here. Like we worked with a few tribes to submit letters to a Republican representative in the district where those tribes resided, encouraging him to protect those credits and share the negative impacts that would have occurred on the community or would occur to these communities in terms of the value, the return on those projects. So would encourage you all to do the same. It's going to be likely more impactful if you have a Republican representative, but at the same time, I think all representatives need to hear about those stories. And so, yeah, that's one specific action we're taking. And I think there was something else, but I can't recall right now. Anything else you want to talk about in the investment tax credit?
Nothing on our end. I will say EPN and L4GG are not directly involved on the tax credit side. We're focusing on supporting grants, but of course, happy to help be a connector if you're looking for help on a tax credit related matter.
Okay, great. So let me transition it to some more discussion slides. So here's a few different funding sources that we've seen as paused right now. So there's a few Bureau of Reclamation opportunities relating to water available for tribes, Department of Transportation, Rural and Tribal Assistance Pilot Program grants, the DOE's Office of Clean Energy Demonstrations. They had energy improvements in rural areas funding that was pretty substantial. This is flow down funding, but California Energy Commission has a community energy reliability and resilience investment grant that's paused right now because some of that or substantial amount is federally funded. And the DOE Office of State and Community Energy Programs Tribal Home Electrification appliance rebates are here. The website for that is actually no longer up. So that kind of goes back to some of those buckets they were sharing before, that if you received an award, so one example that we're aware of is the BIA's Tribal Climate Resilience Program grants. There was a massive amount of money, I think 120 million, for that program, $120 million or more was available in the latest round, and a significant number of tribes received awards, including many tribes in California under the TCR grants. And unfortunately, those announcements were made, I think, in January, and nobody's heard anything since, as far as I know. So that's kind of this bucket up top. There was a selection made, but it was not awarded, and ultimately the agencies have the discretion to cancel those competitions. And really, the extent of what you can do right now is advocate to the agency and elected representatives. I've been putting this out there. Has anybody heard from the BIA on the TCR grants? I am not aware of anybody hearing back on on those. And feel free to raise your hand, come off mute, share it in the chat. We're kind of opening up our discussion portion of this session. All right, so let me move it to kind of our discussion slide. And I'll share what I know and some of the things that I'm working on, but what agencies are or are not communicating, it's helpful to know, it's helpful to get updates. I feel like there's new updates every week, if not every day on this. What grants that you have or pursued seem to be fine or hold, which are not. What other funding challenges are your tribe experiencing, and what actions are you taking? Are you taking any of the actions here that we discussed? Are you taking other actions? So we'd love to hear from everybody here today. We really want TECC-X to be collaborative, that we're sharing resources, lessons learned, actions, activities together. So I would like to open it up and encourage you to share in response to any or all of these questions. So any volunteers? Well, one update I will provide on some DOE grants that we have right now is working with multiple tribes on Department of Energy, Office of Energy deployment grants. So this is a pretty standard grant program. Was not kind of flagged and wasn't necessarily impacted. All agencies were impacted initially. Actually late last week, we met with our project officer on one of the grants, and apparently they're continuing to pay out under kind of existing grants, but if you need some action, like agreement modification, scope modification, budget modification, likely execution of an award, they're currently on pause. Our project officer said that they're hopeful that that they're basically asking for the same information that was already provided that helped them get unpaused before, when the initial pause occurred across the board. So he seemed optimistic about it, but that was a new development for us, is that we're working on a modification for one of the grants, and the project officer saying those actions are being paused right now. So in the chat, the tribal here staff initially responded to emails regarding the application process, but have been silent for the past 2 weeks. So that's good to know. Yeah, it's not it's not great that we don't see the website for it anymore, or at least not as far as we could find. Another one kind of along those lines, the 401(d) grid resilience grants. Oh, I got somebody popping on screen. Kayla, you want to share?
Oh, no, I apologize.
Okay, no worries. So 401(d) grants, grid formula resilience, the grid resilience formula grants. So there was a long period of silence with that particular division, and they are starting to communicate again. It seems like the existing awards are ones that they're continuing to fund. They're saying that they are hopeful that the fiscal year 2025 allocations will proceed, but there's been no movement on that. Based on how things are going, I'm a little more pessimistic on that, but I don't have any specific insights into that. We did work with tribes in Southern California to send letters to that program, to the directors of that program and others about those grants, basically saying why that grant was not subject to the executive order, that grid resilience was not part of what should have been paused. So there's always, it's not the ideal approach. Like, you don't want to kind of be negotiating in that way, but in some cases, to be able to distinguish it from what should be subject to the from what shouldn't be subject to the executive order based on what it is the way to go. So if you would like to take similar action on the investment tax credit or the 401(d) grant, we're happy to share the template letters we've used with you. Please just, send me an email afterwards or direct message me. So Bruce asked if we've heard anything about the DOT Rural and Tribal Assistance Pilot Program. So that was one of the ones. I don't have any kind of involvement in that through any of my work right now, but that is one where we are aware is being paused right now. Does anybody else have any insights into the Department of Transportation Rural and Tribal Assistance Pilot Program grants? Okay. Not hearing anybody from anybody else. CPRG you talked about. So we, at least one tribe that's within one SCTCA tribe has a CPRG grant that is seeming to have been unpaused. They're proceeding and spending like crazy to get it, before something changes on that. Caitlin, are there anybody you're aware of that's still experiencing challenges? Is that kind of true across the board?
I think for CPRG, to my knowledge, seem to be moving forward at this point in time. I don't believe anyone has frozen funds at the moment, so I think everyone is kind of moving ahead and but yeah, so that's the trend for DPRG. But that's not the same for a lot of other grant programs are still frozen to my knowledge.
Did you say, there are specific tribal ones you could mention that you're aware of, or that tribes were taking advantage of that you're seeing, movement versus or particularly not movement?
So we're in the process of launching this CPRG tribal working group. So we have just gauged interest of those who would be wanting to join us. And I'll be sure to send you, Josh, the registration form to pass along to any CPRG grantees you may know of. But we have not heard specifically, we haven't had the opportunity to gather everyone yet and hear specifically what they're experiencing yet.
The main the main EPA grant dollar wise where tribes are negatively impacted is the community change grant, which is over $1 billion of awarded grants in total, with over $200 million for tribes, including Alaska Native communities, and all of that funding has been frozen for over a month. And so the community change grants are one area where we've been very focused, and definitely the area at EPA where tribes have been most negatively impacted.
Did we see any of those awards actually have been made, or were they all in the kind of pre-award stats?
All of those awards were made, and almost all of them, over 100 of them were finalized. I think I can put the selections are still posted online. CCG selections here.
Yeah, I think we know of one CCG awardee. I don't believe they're a tribal awardee, but they were selected, but they did not they did not sign an award with EPA. But I think everyone else who has been selected on the website have had an award signed.
Yeah.
Okay. It's good to know. I guess one thing that, I don't know that there were any direct tribal awardees in California. I don't think there were, but State of California and Grid Alternatives both received Solar for All grants. It seems like those are kind of gotten unstuck. The CEC's been holding listening sessions, tribal listening sessions. They have another one tomorrow. Should have dropped that in the should have added that to the slide deck. Amy, I don't know if that's handy, if you could drop that in the chat. And then Grid Alternatives has theirs as well. I'm not as in tune with where they're at. But that's, that funding should be available to all California tribes through the state and or grid when it rolls out. And it seems like both are kind of moving forward as if it's proceeding. Okay, we have 1 minute left. Anybody else want to speak up, share any specific challenges that you're facing? Do you know the status of the DOE tribal set aside? Tom, can you be more specific of which tribal set aside?
Josh, can you hear me?
Yes.
The $21 billion set aside under DOE for energy innovative grants and loans. I think it's more
The
low
DOE
interest loan program.
the loan program?
Yes, I think it's a 90% match. Or 90% guaranteed, 10% match.
I'm aware of one tribe and one SCCA tribe that did receive the loan guarantee. He was at the summit, the Tribal Energy Summit at CEC last month, and I don't recall the status of that. So I can try to find out though.
Thank you.
Okay, well, we're at time, so we should have people coming back from the other room now, or let's see, I'm going to close that room and have people come back. Looks like Angie's still talking. Well, any other, while we're giving them another minute or so, any other challenges or any questions like that anybody has? I mean, what we want to do, and what we're going to try to do with this with the separate CPUC training as well, is make this group more actionable. So how can we kind of gather perspectives, challenges, and stuff like that, and make this a space where we can co-create change. So we're gonna figure out how next kind of meeting to help front load the discussion, make it quite a bit more actionable for people.
Fields. But now the world's a little different. And Shasta's going to talk a little bit more about that. But we're talking more about just climate resilience in a changing world where maybe it's even more important than ever that we have the opportunity to think through other institutions and fields when we're doing our climate work. Like basically the question becomes, how do we keep this work going? Because we have to, even though we're back to a paradigm where climate change is a challenging subject. Okay. So in this 45 minutes, we'll do a little bit of an introduction to the training. We're going to talk a little bit about previous Tribal Climate Health Project services, like what have we already done and what can we offer to you even today? And then we're going to use this conversation as a roundtable on sort of how do we make this series as beneficial to you as we possibly can, given the times that we are in. So that's the majority of this conversation. We have some thoughts on the kinds of topics we'd like to raise, but honestly, we're getting our feedback under us, and we want to hear from folks like you about what would be the most beneficial use of your time if you're going to come back and spend, if we do it every other month, what would be the most beneficial to you? So Tribal Climate Health Project in general offers expert-led and training and peer knowledge sharing. We've been, like I said, doing it for 9 years, focused on tribal resilience across climate adaptation and other adjacent fields. And then we're really, let's sort of explain this already, but honestly, part of this too is collaboration. How do we create more relationships across tribes, but also across other subject matter experts in other fields as well. And then really at the end of the day, helping you overcome your biggest hurdles and implementing your climate adaptation goals. Let's go to the next slide, and I'm going to pass it off to Shasta Gon. Again, she's the environmental director for the Paul Van Mission Indian. She's our fearless leader of the Tribal Climate Health Project. She's a really big, great leader in the climate space, especially here in California. And she's going to talk to you a little bit more about what we're hoping to gain out of this, and just a little note on the times we are in.
Yeah, thanks, Angie. So one thing to note is that is not my phone number, so please don't call it. I have no idea whose phone number that is. That's an 805, which I guess is Santa Barbara, right? So maybe that's Josh's number. I don't know, but it's just as well, because if you call me, I'm not going to pick up. I'm not a phone person, but definitely feel free to send any correspondence to my email, and then once I know who you are, I will be more likely to pick up the phone. But I think there's only a few people in the room today who don't know me, but I'm glad to see that we've got some folks from the state, Hoi Fei from SGC, Walker Wheeland from OEHA. I don't know if any of the others are from, no, I think everybody else is from a tribe or a tribal serving organization. And of course, Tina, who is on my staff and is a huge help with the Tribal Climate Health Project, and then Tila, same thing, is one of our staff support folks. But what we've been doing with this funding, and I can't believe it's been 9 years. Josh said that, and I did my face because it just doesn't seem possible that it's been that long, but it has. And we've been fortunate to mostly been supported by the BIA's Tribal Climate Resilience funding. And as I think several of you probably know, that funding is no more. I think that this last round was going to be the last round regardless, but there was also a lot of roadblocks put in place and freezes by the current administration. And that's also been the case with other climate funding. We know we have Rob Roy on the phone or on the Zoom with us today, and he, as La Jolla's environmental director, partnered with John Flores at San Pasqual for a CPRG climate pollution reduction grant implementation funding. And that funding was frozen for a while until it wasn't. And then, like a lot of other people, there was a mad dash, by La Jolla and San Pasqual to be able to get some stuff done unless that funding was going to be once again taken away. And let's have that conversation in the time that we have. If you have experienced that, where some of your funding has been cut, if you've come up with ways to get around those barriers, or let us know what your status is. We have resources as well that we can share, at least for things like template letters to send to your project officers, what the latest is with some of the lawsuits that have taken place, where the latest has been the preliminary injunction on the funding under the Bipartisan Infrastructure Law and the Inflation Reduction Act. That money should all be available to you now. And if it's not, there are ways to try to get it. But I think we could all go on and on about how difficult and stressful these last several weeks have been. It's now been just over 100 days in this administration. And Rob, please feel free to chime in.
Well, Shasta, I wanted to kind of double check with you on the BIA TCRP funds. So you were saying that that funding is no more. I know La Jolla was awarded some funds in the last go around, and I'm not managing those funds, and so I may not be up to date on everything. What I had heard was that the funds were frozen, but they were just working to try to, remove that really bad, horrible word of climate out of there. And then maybe those funds would be reopened up. But the whole thing is the Tribal Climate Resilience Program. But so I just wanted to check in with you. Do you know for sure that the BITCRP funding for this fiscal year that we're in, FY25, is completely gone? Or is there still a chance that might be available?
So let me clarify that. I didn't mean that this fiscal year's funding was gone. You're right. That is under that current freeze that is at the BIA. They're the ones who are working internally to get over those barriers. So the money that was allocated for, I think it's actually fiscal year 24, because they're usually like a year behind with the TCR money. But my understanding was that this was going to be the last round of funding, that the program wasn't going to continue after this last round.
Okay, thank you. That's my understanding as well. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so sorry about that. Didn't mean to confuse anybody, but I can tell you that 2 of Paula's TCR grants are.
And I guess just kind of along those lines, it seems like the state of California is still, moving forward ahead with, climate. I'm seeing all sorts of different emails coming across my inbox, about California climate related funding. So I think we need to look into that and make sure we understand what those opportunities are and see if we can access those to make up some of our federal funding cuts that we're already starting to see for FY26. And I'm pretty darn confident that the FY27 cuts to EPA's budget are going to be much more drastic than what we're already starting to see for FY26. So we're going to need to diversify our funding sources.
And that's absolutely what we want to have more conversation about. And, I thank you for that, Rob. And hopefully maybe our couple of,
And I've lost being able to hear Shasta. Is it only
Oh.
me or is it anyone else?
I can hear her. It might be you, Rob.
Okay.
Can you hear me?
I can't hear anyone. Must just be me. I'm assuming it's me. Oh, and I think
We're
Angie's
nodding.
nodding. It's me. All right. I'm probably gonna have
Sorry,
to drop
Rob.
off and rejoin.
Okay, we'll let you back in.
Yeah, Angie,
All
you want to
right.
go ahead and add
Yeah.
on a little bit?
Well, yeah, so the intention behind these meetings is when we come back around, we'll do this opportunity roundtable, and I think everybody agrees. We're taking a closer look now at funding opportunities that are coming out of the state. We're going to be tracking that, and there's a lot of policy movement happening at the state right now that will affect climate investments. Prop 4 passed in the process of being designed and deployed. There was just an input opportunity that passed recently, but there's some hope there for things that I think tribes will be very interested in. The California state budget's going to go through its May revise. There's going to be a greenhouse gas reduction reauthorization this year, and then there's something called the Climate Superfund Act that's been sponsored in legislation. So lots of moving parts and pieces. I think we wanted to have a stable place to come together and talk about these things so that tribes can come just regularly and kind of get briefed and updated on these kinds of things. So continue to come back because it's not a topic that's going away anytime soon. And when you do come, you can contribute to that conversation if you know of other funding opportunities, maybe philanthropic, which I think we're all going to have to lean on some more. Okay, but in this piece, we're sort of acknowledging that the times are tough right now. A lot of folks are getting beat up on their climate work. So climate work was always kind of a challenge, and now it's getting a little bit more challenging. So how do we move forward regardless of what's happening in the ways that we can by linking arms, ideally, with the institutions that are maybe a little bit more stable? So let's go to the next slide. This is just a little bit more about Tribal Climate Health Project. So what we want to do here is just tell you a little bit about what we've offered and give you a chance to access the resources that Tribal Climate Health Project has already produced over the last 9 years. So this is just the structure. Paul is in charge here, the subcontractor to Prosper. I'm the lead consultant, and then we've had advisory groups. We've provided all sorts of capacity building opportunities, and we'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. And at the same time, we're always sort of testing. We're testing in person with tribes. All the climate adaptation work that we turn into curriculum is usually tested with actual tribes, usually in California, that are trying to make their way through the process of doing their own climate resilience work. Okay, next slide. So over the 9 years, we've had well over 1,000 practitioners trained, either through our webinars, in-person summits, or presentations that we've done all across the country. And all of those are available on our website, or at least the slides are available. And we have something that's relatively new. It's called our self-paced option. It's called My Adaptation Pathway. And actually, Tila, if you have a moment, if you could just pop that up. What we tried to do there is have a sequential curriculum so you can kind of walk through your own self-paced training. So whenever you want to pop in here, you can be walked through topics that are related to tribes, climate change, and health. So health impacts and other impacts of climate change. And this is just how it's structured. So we have a course 1 is on how tribes are affected by climate change, which is basically pointing you to any past relevant trainings on that topic in a sequential order of like various lessons, and it's a choose your adventure. You don't have to go linearly through this. You could pick and choose whatever's of interest to you. We basically wanted to compile and make navigable all of the training resources that we felt were of most value, and then you get pointed to other resources as well outside of just recorded trainings. So course 2, assess, determine. This is like determining your community's most significant climate health vulnerabilities. Tribal Climate Health Project has focused a lot on how to overcome the challenge of data and fact finding when it comes to doing your vulnerability assessment, or really understanding where the risk really lies and bringing that together with your internal information, your tribal information, your traditional ecological information, your community's knowledge and observation, and bringing that together with publicly accessible information so that you can have the most meaningful and informed assessment of climate risks as you can, and walking through what that process could look like using all the best practices we could find. And the course 3 being plan on planning. So once we do a vulnerability assessment, we talk a lot about an adaptation plan, and maybe you've done one. And so this is all about how to decide what strategies you'll use to address the things that came out of your assessment of your vulnerabilities. It's lots of different resources and trainings there. And it's not just Shasta and I talking, we typically bring in other experts as well. And a lot of times we're leaning more and more in on peer learning. And so making sure that like tribes are able to talk to each other about what's working, which we think is some of the best capacity building we can offer. And lastly, course 4 is on ACT, right? So this is sort of the trajectory of a lot of the climate adaptation work is you got to go through the assessment, then the plan, and then ACT. You're probably acting already in many ways, even if you don't have a plan in place. And so this is a whole course on implementing and tracking the strategies that you selected in your adaptation plan. Okay, so I just wanted to give you a quick peek that that's something you can access starting even today, and you can poke around in there. You can share it with staff if you've got folks that are kind of newer to tribal resilience, especially if they're interested too in the health impacts of climate change. You can just send this their way. It's all free. It's all open access. All you have to do is kind of like register in. Maybe Tila, if you can go back to the slides, and then if you can drop that link into the chat too, that'd be great for everybody.
It's in there. She's ahead of us.
Oh, you're on top of it. Okay. It's hard, to be on site at a conference and do this stuff I'm on one screen, everybody, and it's not fun. So we also do a lot of data development work. And so one of the things that we'll show you too in the resources on the next slide is something we call our EASY tool. If you've heard me talk about it, it's basically back to that idea that fact finding on climate resilience information is super hard. It takes a lot of time. And so we were trying to make it less hard, try to take the burden off of the data finding process by creating a tool that we call our exposures, impacts, and strategies inventory. And we've used that and refined it with cohorts of tribes in California. We're now on our third cohort of that. We're basically trying to pull all the best information that's available for tribes and then getting their feedback. Is this useful? What else do you need? What would be a better way to see this information? And so we'll point you to where you can find that information too. One good thing we'll be showcasing here, I think down the line once we're further along, is something we're working on with the Public Health Institute, who runs the California Healthy Places Index. And we are so excited because this EASY tool is in Excel, which isn't actually that easy. And so we're working with PHI, who has a very great platform, Healthy Places Index, that's a web-based tool, and trying to translate some of what we know that tribes need into that tool for a tribal tool that they're building out on extreme heat. And so we got a CEC grant to do that, and that's in progress now. And we got a lot of stuff in the works. Assuming that the funding stays where it's supposed to stay, we are working on a lot on risk related to wildfire health and water supply, which we're hoping to pull into a white paper, and then some additional work on extreme heat and other vulnerability assessment summaries for tribes that have linked arms with us. Okay, next slide. These are just going to be some links that you could go to for some of the things I just talked about, including that EASY tool. All these things, again, free, accessible. You could go right to it. You could download that EASY tool today. And if you ever needed help understanding how to use it, we can very easily provide a demo and some support for you to use those kinds of tools. Maybe you're at the beginning of the process of doing climate adaptation work and you're like most of us at the beginning, scratching your head, what am I supposed to look for? How do you measure certain indicators? What are the exposures and secondary exposures? What are the potential impacts that could come to my tribe? This can help take off some of the burden of that beginning stage process. Okay. One last thing to say on this slide too is we run something called the National Tribal Resilience Data Work Group, and we've been running that for a few years now. It's made up of, we like to think of ourselves as data nerds, but it's on this data topic. If some of the thought leaders and toolmakers have the data more accessible to tribes so that they have a better chance of sort of removing these blind spots to inform their adaptation efforts. And so if that's of interest to you, that's something that any tribal participant or state folk could come and participate in to get involved. Okay, next slide. Oh, thanks, Christian. We got a it's always nice to hear. We poured some good time and effort into that easy tool. Christian says it's good, so thank you. Okay, so that's enough of me talking at you. I just wanted you to know that starting now, you can go into the website and pull whatever resources you can. We would be so happy if any of it is helpful to you. And if you're confused by any of it, just reach out. Okay, so we've got a couple of questions here on Mentimeter. We want to have a discussion with you on a few topics and really hear more from you about, gosh, how are things today and how can these trainings be as supportive as possible? So if you can either join menti.com and then use this code, you just plug it right in, and that's going to take you to a few questions. So we're going to have a first question, then have some discussion, or you can use this QR code, which I'm going to do right now. So if everybody can be just logging in, and there's going to be some open-ended, some multiple choice, and hoping we get some good engagement here, but I also want to hear from you out loud. So Tila, I think if you would mind, let's go to Mentimeter to show what people are seeing. Okay. Oh, you guys are good. Okay. In 2025, so this is the first question, then we'll talk it out. What are the biggest difficulties in advancing your tribal climate and resilience efforts? So we'll give you a little bit of time with federal funding uncertainty. Yep. Not being able to say the word climate. Yeah. Oh, they struggle mentally.
Just FYI, the way this is set up, it looks like we can only put in one response. Once you hit enter, you're unable to put in an additional response. So.
Yeah, I was expecting to be able to type in some more there. Oh, well.
Yeah. But you know what? We can talk about it too, because I put in not being able to say the word climate. You know, every time I see a federal person, I just want to be like, climate, climate, climate.
Most of them will be happy to hear it.
Yeah, it's true.
Capacity of low capacity, low experience engaging with tribes on extreme heat specifically. Okay. So Rob, why don't you share more out loud of what you were thinking that you weren't able to include?
Well, I didn't have a second or third thing in mind. I just figured I would come up with something, but I think it was really just kind of relating though, just, kind of around, capacity. I tend to be stretched really thin, and I've been doing a lot of renewable energy work, and I just only have so much time in a day and so many brain cells. And some of those have gotten burnt out over the last 63, almost 64 years. I only have so much capacity, and yeah, so not sure what else I was going to say.
I'm hearing that though, for sure. And that's one of the toughest issues. And then, other than not being able to say climate, I would probably put on here burnout. It's just hard to keep doing this work with all the barriers. And I'm finding that sense of burnout also in the people that we're trying to help.
And honestly, I think that, when I talk to our leadership, they're really focused on other things. Climate is not the most important thing to tribal leadership right now. There's all these other funding issues, all sorts of other, bigger picture things, tribes, trying to reduce or trying to, restore good fire back to the land, focusing on, the economic hardships that the tribe is facing. And I think there's a lot of uncertainty with the next 4 years of the federal government, and everybody hearing that, the new administration is going to remove all of these mandates for electric vehicles and electric infrastructure and drill baby drill. And so I think that, decision makers might be looking at, this, what we're hearing from the federal government and going, well, why am I still focusing so much on climate things? I don't have the capacity I can only focus on so much. So climate is going to, now go on the back burner, if it's even on the stove at all, because of the change in priorities from the federal government.
Yeah. Everything is going to get contracted and strained. I'm curious what y'all are experiencing. What about the GAP grant? I mean, I'm thinking about in terms of core permanent tribal capacity. Are y'all worried about that? Obviously, we're not going to see other federal dollars probably arrive, but Shasta, what are you seeing there?
I haven't heard much. I was able to get my preliminary application into my project officer. I think that's the case for most of us, but I read last week that grants.gov is no longer accessible by federal project officers to even put the applications, and the process is not, it's not accessible. So I've not heard anything. I think this will come up. I'm sure this will come up at our next Regional Tribal Operations Committee meeting, which will be in June. I don't know, Christian or Rob, if you have heard anything about GAP, but I haven't received anything saying you may now put your actual application in, and that usually is in May, right?
Right,
Yeah,
I'm at the same status with you, Shasta. I was told that we're going to be allocated, or that I have already been allocated what I asked for FY26. Now, I also tried for FY27 funding, and there's no award for that. They said, no, sorry, we can't award 2 years. We can only award 1 year. Although for my 319 base, I was told to go ahead and apply for FY27 as well. So I was, funded forward for 319 base, which I've never ever been allowed to do in the past. I've only been able to be funded forward for GAP. And GAP, I was told no, but I have been, like I said, I was given everything I asked for in GAP, and I asked for a fairly substantial increase in GAP, and I received it. But I think in FY27, I'm expecting very significant cuts. Because if the EPA is going to be cut back 50 to 65%, they're not going to be able to hold tribes harmless.
Yeah. Christian, have you heard anything from your PO?
yeah, I actually just spoke with my PPG lead PO on Thursday, and he kind of gave me some insight saying that they're still trying to get the budget determined for all tribes in regards to GAP. I don't know if it's PPG, but they want to release the tentative approval early May, because I want to say we have to submit via grants.gov in June. So they want to give us at least a month time to submit an official budget and work plan for fiscal year 26. Now, granted, I'm part of the PPG and I'm fiscal year 26 will be my year 5. So, I don't know how different that is if on other tribes, if they're a part of PPG or if it's GAP standalone. But I'm hoping that I get my tentative or what I submitted approved, because like Angie mentioned, GAP is kind of the foundation of a lot of tribal, environmental departments. And if we don't have that, then we really don't have much in terms of, low-hanging fruit. So if they kick out that stool, then forget about even trying to get competitive grant applications, So I'm optimistic. I'm hoping that I can hear something back soon and get that award what I submitted for fiscal year 26, and honestly keep it year by year, because I don't know what's going to look like in fiscal year 27.
Yeah, and Christian, in response to your question there about does PPG have anything to do with it? Yes, it does. PPG tribes are usually receive the information last. EPA usually tries to fund the standalone GAP grants first.
Okay.
And then we will receive our final notifications for PPG tribes later. But I still haven't received my Clean Air Act 105 award amount, nor have I received any status on my application for 319 competitive funds. And so I can't really figure out my PPG budget until I am told about those, 105 and 319 competitive.
All right.
So I want to acknowledge too here, we have federally, not federally recognized tribes that are also struggling here too, who maybe not as affected as the federal funding freeze, but maybe have always had some difficulties accessing dollars. FAY, or the Strategic Growth Council, has a program that Paula and I are supporting, tribal capacity building. So there's some dollars there, and I know that they're hoping to get more rounds of funding for that. But I'm sure if FAY is sitting here thinking, you're hearing about the coming challenges for capacity across all California Native American tribes. And I'm sure California is thinking into how to be supportive. I don't know, Faye, if you want to share any thoughts.
Yeah, we have a council meeting next week where we're going to be proposing a tribal housing capacity building program. So you're definitely welcome to attend and give public comment and share some of the what you shared here today. Broadly speaking, what that proposal will entail is having the council commit to 30 million for some combination of tribal capacity building, tribal housing project development costs, as well as any kind of physical infrastructure like pre-development work. So we purposely are not describing out like what that or prescribing what the program design will be right now. What we want to have the funds committed first before going back to tribes to co-design the program with them. So can't really give the exact specifications, but we do hope that there will be some portion that looks kind of like what we have for the current round of travel capacity building that's really dedicated just to some of the capacity issues that we described here. So hopefully that will pass and we'll have more to share after next week.
Thank you. We all could use some good news right now. We always thank Strategic Growth Council for they're pretty diligent on this issue of tribal capacity. So to follow on what Rob was saying too. So Rob, I think your comments were really speaking to like the purpose of this training, to be honest, what we want to do with the future series here. You're saying, yeah, climate change is not a word that we can use, or maybe it's not a word that's going to be of highest priority. So the question becomes, you said economic development, you talked about transportation, you talked about wildfire. Do we need to lean more in on those institutions and fields to get the work done? And maybe that might be a course of action. And so I think that's what we want to do. We want to explore a little bit more about how we try to achieve our adaptation goals through these other fields. Okay, let's go to the next. Thank you for that engagement. All of this is to help us inform what we can do to be most helpful. These are what were originally draft thoughts on objectives of this training and what you'll do here in Mentimeter. So go back in either on your browser, on your phone, and we want you to rank the objectives of this training. And then we'll talk it out here. What other objectives we should be thinking about? Does anybody need the code again or anything? I think if you go to Mentimeter. Oh, there you go. Thank you. It's at the top. If you're having trouble, oh, there we go. If you're having any trouble with the tool, just let us know. But it's pretty, I think you just do some dragging.
Yeah, it's a drag and drop.
Yeah. I like Mentimeter. It's so clean. Okay, so seeming like for now, the first one becomes identify opportunities to progress your tribe's climate resilience work despite potential climate opposition. Yeah. Okay. Anybody here want to speak to any of these or anything that we are missing? Anything that you would like us to address in this series that isn't already here? Or does this number one does it really speak to a need right now? We don't want to take your time for things that aren't needed.
I'll just observe that even though we've got successes and practices from other California tribes coming in fourth place, that doesn't mean that that's not significant. I think I have learned a lot from hearing about what other tribes have done. Just the main priority is going to be how do we actually make progress? So for me, number one is opportunities to progress our climate resilience work despite the opposition. Bringing people in to help with that could also be a successful tribe that has said, here's what we did to identify those opportunities to progress the work. You know what? We should have a Menti slide on here that says, what are your euphemisms for the word climate?
Oh God, are we back to adverse environmental effects or something?
Well, yeah, but they're even looking for that. It's don't call it something where it's obvious you're just trying to say the same thing with new words. So I think we need to come up with a code word. Like instead of climate, we'll call it chocolate. How are you going to manage your chocolate change problems? Like, because you can never have too much chocolate. So we all can have like this is how chocolate is affecting me. This is what our There are people in my office who don't like chocolate. How am I going to manage that problem?
Yeah, I like it. I like it. You know, I don't think anybody's gonna oppose the reality of wildfire, which is like what Rob was saying. Like, okay, so let's dive in on wildfire. Do we
I
need to
think
squabble about whether or not it's climate change? I don't know. Christian,
Yeah, I think a good topic is finding how, like, a lot of in my experience, a lot of departments here at Boba are all kind of doing climate work without them knowing about it. So how we can, you know, remove that blanket and be transparent and understand this is all climate work is all under one big umbrella. So putting that all together and leveraging all the resources so that we can implement you know, adaptation work, I think is important. So I'm having a tough time exposing that to different departments or the tribal community and even the tribal council, you know, because we want to explore renewable resources for revenue growth. Well, that's, you know, climate related work. We want to reduce wildfire, you know, impacts. That's climate related work. You know, we want to protect cultural resources from vulnerabilities from climate threats, you know, that's climate related work. So just trying to showcase that all the work we're doing is kind of climate related, and that way we can kind of tackle this together is an issue I'm trying to navigate.
maybe you'll be one of our speakers, since this will be hopefully peer learning mind. I see faces. Sounds like there may be some communications or storytelling opportunities.
Yeah.
Yes, I like that. Let's go. We have a couple more questions for you. So stay in Mentimeter. Here's one. What support or assistance would you hope to gain in these capacity building trainings? And then we're going to talk a little bit about topics. So anything you haven't already said, any kind of thoughts on the assistance you need? Or you can just say it out loud too, if you're just thinking out your responses. And that might look like we have all sorts of tricks and things we could pull out for these. You know, case studies and storytelling. We could bring in certain subject matter experts. We could try to identify key resources that are useful for you to use in your work. But maybe think about other folks on your staff that you would like to see, you know, upskilled in this area despite the challenges. Yeah, okay. Tools and resources such as data, how to successfully write a grant without saying climate. Yeah, yes. I actually think that's right on target with this whole series, this TECC-X thing. So thank you for that. And happy to share more about all the data accessibility efforts that we've had with Tribal Climate Health Project. How to clone myself. Getting 1 to 2 youth interns. Yay, for 4 to 6 weeks in the summer, and I'm looking for things for them to do. Well, taking trainings could be one, but yeah, that's interesting to think into. Sometimes these interns are good at gathering information, how to collaborate with other tribes, agencies, and orgs. Yeah, so maybe we spend some time in these conversations, highlighting good experiences that you all have had or practices and how to collaborate doing intertribal resilience work. I like that. How to conduct regional planning efforts. That seems related, right? Like doing things on a regional basis with our nearby tribes and other partners. Yeah. Okay. Awareness of programs or projects that we can get involved with. Oh, okay. So things that you don't necessarily have to lead, but can participate in. This is really helpful, guys. Thank you. Okay. Let's go to our next question because we're going to have to roll back into the main room here in a couple of minutes. This is our rough thought of what we might do here, but it could change, and it really will change around what you all feel like is most needed. But since we were thinking about looking through the lens of other fields, we were thinking about having a topic specifically on state emergency management and preparation. A lot of climate resilience work happens through the emergency field. One on infrastructure, which would be like, all right, well, clearly there's transportation is a big one, but there's power infrastructure. how do you get the work done through the lens of these different infrastructure improvements? Health and mental health. I think there's going to be a lot of good folks still in health and mental health that are doing climate work, even as things contract. So we have a lot of good contacts there. Cultural resources and protection. So these are sort of some of the other fields we'd be looking at bringing in to have conversations around. And I'm curious, now we'll go to the next slide. And I want you to rank those for us, and then we'll talk out what other ideas you have. So you just do the same, or drag and drop kind of thing. And you won't hurt our feelings if you say these are not, none of these are good. Infrastructure. Okay. I mean, of all the things, okay, oh, we're switching, but of all the things, infrastructure seems least controversial. Health and mental health is rising to the top. Okay, awesome. Well, we'll certainly do at least one session bringing in more of a sort of a public health lens and a mental health lens.
Oh, they're neck and neck.
This is so exciting to watch.
Infrastructure's in the lead. You know what? We should actually have a horse race, and these are the horses' names. State emergency management and preparation is falling off the pack.
Oh my. We don't do a lot of sports watching, do we, Shasta? But this is as close as we can.
No, you know what? I'm a huge baseball person, so it's all about watching the Padres.
Lose to the Dodgers. Yep.
You know, no, Christian, we're friends, and I want to keep it that way.
All right. Sorry. I just had to get in there. No,
enough problems, guys.
Angie, you know, I'd be very interested in learning more about like key environmental laws and policies, and especially understanding how these new executive orders may affect, you know, these key laws and policies relevant to tribes. Because I have a hard time trying to navigate that, and you know, we all get hundreds of emails coming across our inbox, and sometimes those lengthy, you know, summaries of executive orders just are just difficult to interpret. So I'd love to learn more about that.
Yeah,
I love that. Christian, I love that. That's so great. I'm a frustrated wannabe lawyer. I would love it. And we've got, in fact, I think we've got the whatchamacallits for good governance, lawyers for good governance on the in the other room.
That's right. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, I like that though. You know, a lot of people are talking about going back to the basics in terms of environmentalism or environmental policy. So we're still going to, hopefully there's still some efforts around clean air, clean water, but how are those changing, right? Okay.
Like help us figure out the WOTUS rule and what we're supposed to say about it and how it's going to affect us.
Exactly. Yes.
Okay. All right. Well, great. We actually have to go back to the big breakout, report out, and we have a couple more Menti questions for you. But I want to say thank you so much for this great conversation, helping us think into the future of these webinars, making them as useful for you as possible. If you have more thoughts, you can always reach out to Shasta or I, and we will be back.
Okay, so do we have the whole group back now?
Josh, we're back.
Okay, great. You want to do your report out?
Sure. Oh, you want to do it, Shasta? Go for it.
Sure, I'll do it. No, I was just going to say, what? We're supposed to report out? We had a really good conversation. I think a lot of people, most people stayed in your room, so fine, whatever. Ours, I'm sure, was more interesting, but we had a good conversation. We had a couple of state folks with us and tribal folks, and had some good feedback on what we might want to present in our future webinars. And the Menti results were really illuminating as well. So, and we had a great suggestion at the very end from Christian at Saboba about having a webinar focused on how changes to environmental laws are affecting tribes and kind of how to navigate and figure out what are the consequences of those changes or the various executive orders and how do they affect tribes in our work on climate. We also decided, or I should say, I decided that our euphemism for climate now, so we don't get caught, is going to be chocolate. So we're going to talk about chocolate change and how we're all deeply affected by chocolate change. So yeah, it was a really good discussion, and I think it's going to take us a long way to helping us develop the right resources to talk about in our future webinars.
For chocolate change, I like it. You came up with something very actionable in your meeting. I appreciate that. So we had the great folks from lawyers Caitlin and Zealand from Environmental Protection Network, and also representing Lawyers for Good Government, and just sharing really the lay of the land. What's the status of your funding award and what you can do about it, and how you can be connected with Lawyers for Good Government to advocate on your tribe's behalf, including bringing it to and having it be included in some of the court orders that are occurring. So if you are experiencing, if let's say there was a preliminary injunction or temporary restraining order on a grant, and the agency should be working with you in providing the funds, and otherwise proceeding if they're not, you can use that intake to connect with Lawyers for Good Government, who can advocate on your behalf and hopefully have that information be shared with the court to ensure that they specifically know that your grant is not being acted upon, and they can help enforce that order. And we talked about various actions and activities and some other challenges that tribes are facing. So 1 minute left. Any final questions or comments?
And Josh, we do have a couple last Mentimeter questions for folks that we hope that they answer before they go, so we know how to move forward from here. Tila, would you mind actually lifting that up? And if anybody does have any final remarks, please raise your hand. Okay, so Mentimeter, if you go to the link that Tila just shared, and actually, Tila, are you able to share your screen?
Yes, is it all right, Josh, if I kick you off?
Yep.
Let me just a couple quick questions. We want to ask you about format. So what is your preferred format for these TECC-X meetings? These are some options. We could do the same thing we did today, which we have, the opportunity roundtable, then we do 2 breakouts, one from TECC, one from Tribal Climate Health Project, or we can rotate. Tribal Climate Health Project, if you don't feel like you want to be like broken out and have to miss one or the other, we could rotate. Or we meet monthly, and basically TECC does TECC, Tribal Climate Health Project, TECC, Tribal Climate Health Project. Give us your thoughts on that. I think we're still, we're curious if you like a bi-monthly or a monthly option for this. And then I know it's 11 o'clock, so we have one last question, right, Tila? Please rate also how useful today's meeting was for you. And that's all we have for you. Very useful, somewhat useful, or not very useful. Oh, you guys were helpful and sweet. All right, I'm glad very useful is winning. Come on, very useful. But we're striving to make this as useful as possible. So we would take any feedback you have on how we can do this better. Back to you, Josh, to close this out.
Great, thanks everybody. Yeah, so as of right now, depending on these survey results, we're planning on having bi-monthly meetings, kind of co-meetings. So we may, rotate them, and there might be some other in-between meetings as well, focused on microgrids and electric vehicle charging infrastructure and fleet transition, co-hosted by the Tribal Pollution Prevention Action Project. So thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for the team from Lawyers for Good Government and Environmental Protection Network for joining us and sharing information today. And keep fighting the good fight, everybody.
Whatever, Christian. Bye, everybody.
Protect that climate. Or protect that chocolate, I mean.
Yes.